The shipyard floated above the colony world like a massive steel flower, its docking arms reaching out into the darkness of space where freighters and cargo vessels came to rest and repair themselves after long journeys through the void between stars. Marcus. Chun wiped the grease from his hands and checked the time display on his wrist unit. 0300 hours. Deep into third shift, when most of the station slept and only emergency crews wandered the corridors with their tools and tired eyes. He had been working on the damaged freighter for 6 hours now, replacing burned-out power couplings and rewiring navigation systems that had failed during a solar storm near the Epsilon Reach. The work was tedious, but Marcus found comfort in it, in the simple logic of circuits and conduits that either worked or did not work, unlike the complicated politics of the station where humans were still the newcomers, trying to prove themselves worthy of respect among older species. The scraping sound came from somewhere near the waste disposal chutes, a metallic dragging noise that made Marcus pause with his fusion wrench still in hand. Probably just debris shifting in the recycling systems, he thought, but something about the rhythm of it seemed wrong, seemed deliberate somehow. Marcus moved quietly through the dimly lit cargo bay toward the source of the sound, his boots making soft clicks against the deck plating as he approached the maintenance corridor where the trash compactors hummed and wheezed. What he saw when he rounded the corner made him stop breathing for just a moment. A dragon crouched in the shadows between two waste containers. Not a real dragon from Earth stories, but close enough. The Dractharian stood nearly 8 feet tall even in its hunched position, with scales that shimmered dark green and blue under the emergency lighting. Its wings, those magnificent leather membranes that should have spread 12 feet or more, were folded tight against its body, and Marcus could see that the left one was torn badly, the membrane missing chunks like someone had taken bites from it. The creature was thin, far thinner than any Dractharian Marcus had seen in news feeds or diplomatic footage. Its ribs showed through the scales, and its tail, which should have been thick with muscle, looked almost skeletal as it curled around its feet. Those eyes caught the light and held it, golden and intelligent and filled with something that made Marcus's chest hurt to see, fear mixed with desperate hope. "May I have leftovers, sir?" the Dractharian said in halting galactic common, its voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the deck plates. It gestured with one clawed hand toward Marcus's tool belt where his half-eaten sandwich sat, wrapped in foil from the cantina. Marcus had heard stories about Dractharians his whole life, apex predators from a high-gravity world, warriors and raiders who had terrorized frontier colonies for centuries before the Korthan Empire brought them to heel. They were supposed to be proud and fierce and absolutely terrifying in combat, dragons made real by evolution on a planet where only the strongest survived. This creature looked nothing like those stories. This creature looked like it was starving. "You speak common," Marcus said quietly, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening as he slowly reached for the sandwich. "Yes, sir," the Dractharian replied, its eyes tracking every movement Marcus made with the wariness of something that had been hurt too many times. "I learned many languages, study at archive before." It stopped talking suddenly, as if saying more would reveal too much. Marcus unwrapped the sandwich and held it out, moving slowly the way he might approach a frightened animal. The Dractharian's nostrils flared and its pupils dilated as it smelled the food, but it did not lunge or grab, instead reaching out with surprising gentleness to take the offering from Marcus's hand. "Thank you, sir," it said before tearing into the sandwich with sharp teeth that could have easily taken Marcus's arm off. It ate like it had not seen food in days, maybe weeks. "How long have you been hiding here?" Marcus asked. The Dractharian swallowed and looked at him with those golden eyes that seemed too aware, too intelligent for something the station classified as dangerous fauna in the security briefings. 3 weeks on this station, 5 months in the sector. Running since the purge of Colony Drakmar, where they killed my clutchmates and burned the archives and left us to scatter like ash. In the solar wind, Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He had heard about Drakmar, about the Vel Collective's decision to sanitize the colony after a trade dispute. But the news feeds had made it sound clean and necessary. Not like this. Not like refugees scavenging in shipyards. What's your name? Marcus asked. Jothic, sir. I was scholar before, studying other species and their cultures. But now I am just scavenger, hoping for leftover food and hiding from security patrols that hunt vermin. You're not vermin, Marcus said firmly, surprising himself with the anger in his voice. You're a person. Jothic tilted his head in confusion, the gesture oddly bird-like despite his dragon appearance. Most species do not see difference, sir. To them, Draktharian without clan or territory is just pest to be removed, especially one who is weak and broken. The dragon spread his damaged wings slightly, showing the tears and scars that would probably never heal properly without medical treatment. I cannot fly anymore, cannot fight. So I am nothing by the laws of my own people, and nothing by the laws of yours. Marcus looked into those golden eyes and made a decision that would change everything, though he did not know it yet. Wait here, he said. I'll bring you more food and medical supplies if I can get them without raising questions. Why? Jothic asked, genuine bewilderment in his voice. Why help broken thing that cannot repay you? This is not logical by any species measure. Marcus thought about that for a moment, then shrugged. Maybe humans are just bad at logic, he said. Wait here, I'll be back before shift change. As Marcus walked away to gather supplies, he could feel Jothic's gaze on his back, those golden eyes watching him with something that might have been wonder. And he wondered himself what he was getting into. Helping a refugee that most of the galaxy wanted to forget existed. But when he looked back one more time before rounding the corner, he saw Jothic carefully smoothing out the foil from the sandwich wrapper, folding it with precise claws as if it was something precious, as if kindness from a stranger was worth preserving. And Marcus knew he had made the right choice, even if it turned out to be the difficult one. The shipyard hummed around them both, indifferent to small acts of compassion happening in the shadows between the waste containers. Indifferent to the moment when a human mechanic looked at a starving dragon and saw, not a monster, but simply someone who needed help. The security chief was a Korthan named Corval, which meant Iron Wind in his native language, and he wore the name well 7 feet of muscle and ceremonial scars, with eyes that missed nothing and a sense of honor that was absolute and unforgiving. He found Marcus in the repair bay during the middle of second shift, when the bay was full of workers and there was nowhere to run or hide from what was coming. Mechanic Chun, Corval's voice rumbled like distant thunder. We need to speak privately about your recent activities. Marcus felt his stomach drop, but kept his face neutral. What activities would those be, Chief? The ones involving unauthorized access to emergency medical supplies, irregular break patterns, and suspicious movements in restricted maintenance areas. Corval listed these items without consulting any notes, his enhanced memory holding every detail with perfect clarity. You will come with me now. The security office was small and windowless, designed to make people feel trapped and cooperative. Corval stood rather than sat, towering over Marcus, who had no choice but to look up at the Korthan's scarred face. There is a Draktharian loose on this station, Corval said without preamble. An unregistered refugee with no clan markings and no official status, which makes it vermin by station law and treaty obligation. It's a person, Marcus said quietly. It is a violation of quarantine protocols and a potential security threat, Corval corrected. I have tracked its movements through waste disposal patterns and thermal signatures, and I've also tracked your movements. which coincided with suspicious regularity. I don't know what you're talking about. Corval leaned forward, his massive hands planted on the desk between them. Do not insult my intelligence with lies. Human, you have been feeding it, treating its wounds, harboring a dangerous creature in direct violation of station regulations. He's not dangerous, Marcus said, dropping the pretense. He's a scholar who lost everything. He's starving and hurt, and he just needs help. What he needs is irrelevant. Corval's voice was hard as steel. The law is clear. Unregistered aliens of dangerous species are to be detained and removed. There are no exceptions for sentiment or personal sympathy. Then the law is wrong, Marcus said, feeling anger rise in his chest like fire. Corval's eyes narrowed. You will tell me where the creature is hiding. No. The single word hung in the air between them, a line drawn in the sand that could not be uncrossed. Corval straightened to his full height, looking down at Marcus with something that might have been disappointment. Then you leave me no choice, the security chief said. You are terminated from your position effective immediately, and I am filing formal charges of harboring dangerous fauna, which carries a penalty of up to 5 years in a penal facility. Marcus felt the world tilt beneath him. 5 years in prison for showing kindness to someone who needed help. 5 years for refusing to betray a friend. You may leave this office, Corval continued, but you are banned from all non-public areas of the station, pending your hearing. And if you attempt to contact the creature again, I will add obstruction charges that will double your sentence. Marcus left the security office on shaking legs, his mind racing through options that all seemed equally hopeless. He had nowhere near enough money for a decent lawyer, and even if he did, what court would side with a human who broke the law to help a Drektharian? Jathic was waiting in their usual spot that night, despite the increased security presence. His golden eyes worried when he saw Marcus's expression. What happened? The dragon asked immediately. Marcus told him everything, watching Jathic's face cycle through shock, guilt, and finally determination. I must leave, Jathic said when Marcus finished. I cannot let you suffer for my sake. This is too high a price for your kindness. Where will you go? Marcus asked. Corval knows you're on the station now. He'll hunt you. Then I will leave the station, find another place to hide, another shipyard in another system. Jathic's voice was hollow with defeat. I have survived this long by running. I can run again. No, Marcus said firmly. I'm done running, and you should be too. We're going to fight this. How? Jathic asked. You have no resources, no political power. You are one human against an entire station bureaucracy. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But there's an old human legal precedent about sapient rights that might apply here. Something about beings capable of language and abstract thought having automatic legal protections, regardless of species or registration status. That would take weeks to process through the station council, Jathic said. They will find me long before then. Then we make those weeks count. Marcus pulled out his datapad and started drafting a formal petition. We make enough noise that they can't just sweep this under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. What Marcus did not expect was what happened next. The cantina worker who had been providing extra food appeared at Marcus's door the next morning with groceries. You got fired for doing something decent, she said. Figured you could use some help. The medical tech who had been ignoring missing inventory lost an entire emergency supply kit near the maintenance corridor where Jathic was hiding a docking. Officer named Rodriguez started creating false manifests to confuse the thermal tracking that Corval was using, sending security patrols to the wrong locations at the wrong times. None of these people knew Jathic personally. Most had never even seen him. They were helping because they saw Marcus helping it. Spread like fire through the human population on the station quiet. Acts of rebellion that individually meant little, but together created a network of protection that kept Jothic safe and supplied, while Marcus fought his way through bureaucratic red tape as Athic watched this phenomenon with growing wonder, taking detailed notes on his battered datapad. They are risking their own positions, their own security, for a being they have never met, he said one night while Marcus brought him food that 5 different people had contributed to. That's what humans do, Marcus said. We look out for each other, but I am not human, Jothic protested. No, Marcus agreed. But I vouch for you, and that's enough for them. This makes no sense by any logical measure. Jothic's claws moved rapidly over his datapad. The personal risk far outweighs any possible benefit. Yet they continue to help, and more join every day. Maybe sense isn't the right measure, Marcus suggested. Maybe some things are worth doing even when they're hard. Jothic looked up from his notes, his golden eyes reflecting the dim emergency lighting. You are teaching me something profound about your species, something that all my years of academic study never revealed. What's that? That humanity's power does not come from logic or strength or intelligence, Jothic said slowly. It comes from this. He gestured at the supplies around them. The evidence of dozens of people working together to protect someone they had never met, from this ability to organize compassion, to make care for the vulnerable into a collective action rather than an individual choice. It's just people being decent, Marcus said. No. Jothic's voice was firm. It is revolution disguised as decency. It is a complete rejection of the hierarchical systems that every other species uses to organize their societies. A proximity alert chimed on Marcus's pad. Koval was increasing patrols, getting closer to finding their hiding spot. We need to move you again, Marcus said. How many times can we run? Jothic asked. How long can this continue before someone makes a mistake and the security chief finds me? As long as it takes, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. We just need to hold out until the council hearing. And if they rule against you? Marcus met those golden eyes without flinching. Then we appeal. And if that fails, we appeal again. And if that fails, we find another way, because I'm not giving up on you, and neither are they. Why? Jothic asked, the question he had been asking since the beginning. Why fight so hard for something that logic says you cannot win? Because winning isn't the only thing that matters, Marcus said. Sometimes standing up for what's right matters more. Jothic saved those words in his notes, marking them as essential to understanding the human defect that was spreading through the station like a virus made of hope. And he began to wonder if perhaps this defect was not a weakness at all, but rather a strength that no other species had ever developed. A strength that came not from individual power, but from the collective decision to care for those who could not care for themselves. The Korthan warship arrived without warning, dropping out of faster-than-light travel so close to the station that proximity alarms screamed across every deck and sent maintenance crews scrambling to check for damage from the gravity waket. It was called the Honor Bound, which told you everything you needed to know about Korthan priorities. And it carried a formal extradition request from the Korthan Empire demanding that the station immediately surrender the war criminal. Jothic for transport to a military tribunal. Marcus read the official notice on his datapad with growing dread. War criminal? They're claiming you participated in raids against Korthan colonies. Jothic's wings trembled with a mixture of rage and fear. I have never raided anything in my life. I was a scholar, a researcher. I spent my days in archives studying alien cultures, not attacking them. They're lying, Marcus said flatly. Of course they are lying. Jothic's tail lashed in agitation. But who will believe a homeless refugee over an official military report from one of the galaxy's most powerful empires? The station council convened an emergency session that Marcus was not allowed to attend. He paced outside the council chambers while inside, Politicians and administrators argued about jurisdiction, treaties, and the political cost of defying the Korthan Empire over a single Draktharian who had no official. Statuskerval stood near the council chamber's entrance, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. "You should prepare yourself for disappointment, Mechanic Chen," he said. "The council will comply with the extradition request. They're going to hand him over to be executed for crimes he didn't commit." Marcus's voice was bitter. "That is the nature of law and order," Korval replied. "Sometimes justice is secondary to stability." Marcus was about to respond when his datapad lit up with an incoming transmission, then another, then dozens flooding in so fast that the device's notification system could barely keep up. The first message was from a human news network, 3 sectors away. "Heard about your dragon friend. Recording coverage now. Stand by." The second was from a civil rights organization, reviewing case files. "This appears to violate interstellar sapient protection laws." The third was from someone Marcus had never heard of. "My daughter saw your story on social media. She wants to help. What can we do?" Within an hour, Jathik's story had spread across human communication networks like wildfire. People were sharing it, commenting on it, arguing about it in millions of digital spaces that Marcus had never even known exist today. Human lawyer named Sarah Chen, no relation, arrived on the next transport. "I specialize in interstellar law," she told Marcus, "and I work pro bono for cases involving sapient rights violations. Your petition caught my attention. We don't have money to pay you," Marcus said. "I'm aware," Sarah replied. "I'm also aware that if we let the Korthan Empire execute refugees based on fabricated charges, we set a precedent that will haunt us for generations. So consider this an investment in humanity's moral standing." But the thing that shocked Marcus and Jathik most came 3 days later, when a delegation of human veterans requested permission to testify at the council hearing. These were not young idealists or political activists. These were scarred soldiers who had fought in the border wars, who had lost friends and limbs to Draktharian raiders during the brutal conflicts that had preceded the current uneasy peace. Marcus met them in a conference room that the station had grudgingly provided. There were 12 of them, representing different branches of human military service, and they all wore their dress uniforms with medals that told stories of pain and sacrifice. The delegation leader was a woman named Colonel Williams, who had a cybernetic arm and eyes that had seen too much. "We want to testify on behalf of the Draktharian," she said without preamble. Marcus felt confusion wash over him. "You want to defend him? But your people died fighting his species." "His species," Colonel Williams emphasized. "Not him specifically. We checked the records. Jathik was at an academic archive during the entire span of the border wars. He never participated in raids, never engaged in combat. He was literally teaching xenopsychology to Draktharian younglings while we were fighting their warriors." "So you believe he's innocent?" "We know he's innocent," another veteran spoke up, a man with burn scars covering half his face. "But more than that, we believe that even if he wasn't innocent, even if he had fought against us, he'd still deserve a fair hearing rather than a political execution." "Why?" Marcus asked, echoing Jathik's eternal question. Colonel Williams leaned forward. "Because we're supposed to be better than our worst moments. Because the whole point of everything we fought for was to build a civilization where people get justice, regardless of who they are or where they come from, even former enemies." Marcus pressed, "Especially former enemies." The colonel's voice was firm. "I lost 17 people under my command to Draktharian raiders during the Zeta Station massacre. Some of them were my friends. One of them was going to be my husband." She paused, and Marcus could see the pain in her eyes even after all these years. "I have every reason to hate every Draktharian I ever meet," she continued. "But hate doesn't build civilizations, it just burns them down. And I didn't watch my people die so that humanity could become the same kind of monsters we were fighting against. Jafik had been listening from a secure video feed. Now his image appeared on the conference room display. You would defend me even though my species killed people you loved? The veterans turned to face the screen, and Marcus watched as they saw Jafik for the first time thin, scarred, with his damaged wing and his golden eyes full of confusion and hope. You're not them, Colonel Williams said simply. You're just a kid who's hungry and scared and asking for help. And we're better than leaving kids out in the cold regardless of what species they are. This makes no sense. Jafik's voice trembled. By every measure of logic, by every social structure I have ever studied, you should want me dead or exiled. You should see me as a representation of the beings who hurt you. Maybe we do see that, another veteran said. But we choose to see past it anyway, because that's what it means to be civilized. Making choices that are hard and painful because they're right. Jafik was silent for a long moment, and Marcus could see tears forming in those golden eyes. You are teaching me something that all my years of study never revealed, the dragon said quietly. You are teaching me that people can change, that circumstances do not define worth. That compassion is not just an emotion, but a choice that can be made even in the face of pain. That's humanity in a nutshell, Colonel Williams said with a slight smile. We're stubborn idiots who refuse to let the past define the future. The council hearing happened 2 days later in a packed chamber where stationed residents of multiple species crowded in to watch history being made or justice being denied. Depending on their perspective, Akaravel presented the Korthan Empire's evidence, official military reports, testimony from commanders who claimed to have seen Jafik during raids, documents that looked impressively official and were completely fabricated. Sarah Chun tore those documents apart with methodical precision, showing timestamp inconsistencies, geographic impossibilities, and the simple fact that Jafik had been teaching classes at an archive that had security logs proving his presence during every single alleged raid. But it was the veterans who changed the chamber's atmosphere. When Colonel Williams stood to speak, silence fell like a physical weight. I'm not here to claim that Draktharians are innocent as a species, she said. I am here to say that individuals deserve to be judged as individuals, not as representatives of their group's worst actions. She looked directly at the Korthan representative. If we execute every refugee based on their species' history, rather than their own actions, then we abandon the principles that separate us from animals. We abandon the idea that justice matters. We abandon the dream of a galaxy where beings can be more than their origins. The council chamber erupted in applause from the human sections and confused silence from everyone else. The vote was close 7-5 in favor of granting Jafik asylum and rejecting the extradition request. Koval announced the results with his usual stoic professionalism. But Marcus thought he saw something in the security chief's eyes that might have been approval, or at least respect for humans who stood by their principles, even when it was difficult to watch the proceedings from a secure location. And when the vote was announced, he began to weep openly, great shuddering sobs that shook his whole body. They chose me, he said to Marcus afterward. Beings who owe me nothing, who have every reason to hate my kind. They chose to protect me anyway. That's what humans do, Marcus said. We choose hope over hate, potential over past. We choose to believe that tomorrow can be better than yesterday. If we make it so, Jafik looked at his friend with new understanding. I finally see it, he said. The wonder that happens when someone looks past fear and sees a person asking for help. It is not just about the person being helped. It is about what the helper becomes. It is about building a world where such choices are possible. Yeah, Marcus agreed. That's exactly it. 5 years later, the Galactic Academic Assembly gathered on a neutral station orbiting a star that had no name. Only a catalog number, because even in matters of scholarship, politics required careful navigation of territorial sensitivities. The assembly hall was a massive spherical chamber designed to accommodate the diverse physical requirements of dozens of species. Vel collective members floated in zero-gravity sections. Corthans stood in high-gravity zones. Synth minds projected holographic avatars from computing cores. And beings from 100 worlds gathered to hear presentations on topics ranging from quantum mechanics to social theory DR. Jafik stood at the central podium. His damaged wing now healed as much as it would ever be, leaving visible scars that he wore without shame. He had grown in the past 5 years, not just in body, but in presence, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had survived the unsurvivable and learned lessons that most scholars could only theorize about. His dissertation was titled, "The Human Anomaly: How Irrational Compassion Becomes Civilization's Foundation," and the chamber was packed with beings who had come from across the galaxy to hear a Draktharian explain why humanity was reshaping galactic politics. Despite being relative newcomers with unremarkable abilities, members of the assembly, Jafik began, his voice carrying through translation devices that rendered his words in 100 languages simultaneously. "I come before you today not as an impartial observer, but as a being whose life was saved by the phenomenon I wish to describe." He activated the holographic display behind him, showing images of the shipyard where he had hidden 5 years ago, scavenging for food and waiting to die. 5 years ago, I was a refugee with no resources, no allies, and no hope. He continued, "By every measure used by every major civilization in this galaxy, I was worthless, unable to work, unable to fight, unable to contribute to any collective good." The Vel representative in the audience stirred. "Efficiency demands that limited resources not be wasted on entities without utility." "Precisely," Jafik agreed. "And yet a human mechanic chose to waste resources on me anyway." He showed images of Marcus, carefully anonymized at his friend's request. "This human had no logical reason to help me. I could offer no payment, number political advantage, no benefit of any kind. In fact, helping me actively harmed his interests by costing him his job and nearly resulting in criminal charges." "Then why did he persist?" a Corthan scholar asked. "Because of what humans call compassion," Jafik said. "A concept that exists in other languages, but functions differently in human culture for humans. Compassion is not merely an emotion, but a moral imperative. A framework for action that operates independently of self-interest." He brought up data comparing human behavior to other species across hundreds of documented scenarios. "Observe these patterns. When a Vel colony ship was stranded during the border wars, humans risked military assets to rescue them despite active hostilities. When a Corthan mining accident trapped workers behind a cave-in, human rescue teams volunteered knowing the mission would likely be fatal. When the Drakmar Purge created thousands of Draktharian refugees, human worlds accepted them while other species turned them away." The assembly members shifted in their seats, appendages or flotation fields. Uncomfortable with implications, they were beginning to understand. What makes humans unique is not that they feel compassion, Jafik continued. It is that they have weaponized it, organized it, made it into a collective force that operates at scale. He showed footage of the protests that had erupted across human space when the Corthan Empire tried to extradite him. One mechanic helped one refugee, but that single act triggered a cascade. Other humans helped because they saw him helping. Then more helped because they saw those humans helping. Until an entire network of compassion existed to protect the being most of them had never met. "This is merely tribal behavior," a synthmind argued. "Protecting in-group members." "But I was not in their group," Jafik countered. "I was explicitly out-group, a member of a species that had been their enemy, a refugee with no legal status." a being who could offer them nothing, and yet they organized to protect me based solely on the principle that I was a person asking for help. He displayed graphs showing the spread of pro-refugee legislation across human worlds following his case. The council vote that granted me asylum set a legal precedent, but more importantly, it set a social precedent that demonstrated that humans would collectively defend the vulnerable, even at personal and political cost. This is inefficient, the Vel representative insisted, and yet humanity continues to grow in influence. Jathic replied smoothly. Human diplomatic initiatives have resolved 3 major conflicts in the past 5 years. Human trade networks have expanded faster than any other species. Human cultural exports dominate media across multiple sectors. How does an inefficient strategy produce superior results? The chamber fell silent as academics who had spent centuries studying social systems confronted data that contradicted their fundamental assumptions. I propose, Jathic said, that what we perceive as inefficiency is actually a different form of efficiency, one that invests in long-term relationship building rather than short-term resource optimization. He showed coalition maps. Humans build alliances not through strength or shared interest, but through demonstrated care. When the Vel colony needed rescue, humans did not demand repayment, they simply helped. And now Vel worlds trade preferentially with human systems when Korthan miners were trapped. Humans did not ask for mining rights, they just dug. And now Korthan military provides security for human shipping routes. You are describing reciprocal altruism, a scholar observed. This is not unique to humans. The scale is what makes it unique, Jathic argued. Humans practice reciprocal altruism with beings they may never meet. In situations where reciprocation may never occur, they help because helping is what they do. And somehow this creates networks of cooperation that span species and sectors. He showed the refugee assistance program that Marcus now ran on the station. This program was founded by the mechanic who saved me. It has since helped over 3,000 refugees from 15 different species find shelter, employment, and legal status. None of these refugees can repay the assistance they received. Yet the program continues to expand, funded by voluntary donations from humans who will never meet the beings they are helping. This makes no sense, the Vel representative said, frustration evident in its translated voice. That is exactly my point. Jathic's eyes gleamed. It makes no sense by any framework except the human one. And yet it works. Humans have created what I call a compassion economy, where the currency is not resources or favors, but simply the belief that people deserve help. A Korthan elder stood. I fought against humans during the border wars. I found them frustrating opponents because they would not behave predictably. They would rescue our wounded instead of taking tactical advantage. They would negotiate for peace, even when they held winning positions. Did this compassion make them weak? Jathic asked. No, the Korthan admitted grudgingly. It made them incomprehensible. And incomprehensibility is a strategic advantage. We could not predict what they would do because they did not behave according to rational self-interest. Jathic nodded. Humans taught me that rational self-interest is not the only form of rationality. There is also what might be called community rationality, where the good of the whole is prioritized even at individual cost. And somehow this produces civilizations that are more stable, more innovative, and more influential than those built on competition alone. He showed images of the station where he now lived and worked. 5 years ago, this station was divided along species lines, with humans occupying the lowest status positions today. Humans run the Refugee Assistance Program, the Medical Outreach Clinic, the Education Initiative, and have 3 seats on the Station Council. They achieved this not through force or wealth, but through demonstrated care for the community. You are arguing that compassion is power. A scholar summarized. I'm arguing that compassion is the ultimate power. Jathic corrected. Because it builds things that cannot be built any other way. Trust across species lines. Cooperation without coercion. Civilizations where beings feel safe enough to contribute their best rather than simply surviving. He showed his final image. Marcus and Jathic sharing a meal in the station cantina. Surrounded by beings from a dozen species who had come to the refugee assistance program seeking help. My people believe in the strength of fire and claw, Jathic said quietly. The Vel believe in logic, the Korthans believe in honor. The synth minds believe in calculation, but humans believe in potential. They believe that a starving refugee scavenging for scraps might become a scholar who changes how the galaxy thinks about civilization. They taught me that civilization is not built by the strongest or the smartest or the most efficient. His voice grew stronger. Civilization is built by those willing to lift others up, to see possibility in places where others see only problems, to invest in people not because of what they can provide, but because of what they might become. The chamber was utterly silent now. Every being present processing implications that would take years to fully understand. 3 weeks passed like water through Marcus's fingers, each night bringing him back to the hidden corner of the shipyard where Jathic waited with patient dignity that seemed at odds with his desperate circumstances. Marcus had developed a routine that he hoped looked normal to anyone watching the Vening. Security feeds arriving for his shift with a larger lunch bag than usual, taking his breaks near the waste disposal area where maintenance crews rarely ventured because the smell was unpleasant even with the recycling filters running at full capacity. He brought food scavenged from the cantina. Protein bars that were close to expiration, fruit that had bruises but was still good. Sometimes entire meals that he claimed were extras from the human mess hall, where the cooks knew him and asked no questions when he requested double portions. The medical supplies were trickier. Marcus had to raid the emergency kits in the repair bays slowly, taking one dermal regenerator here, one package of antibiotics there. Never enough from one place to trigger inventory alarms, but enough over time to treat Jathic's infected wounds and begin the slow process of healing that torn wing membrane. During those late-night meetings, Marcus learned things about the galaxy that his human education had never taught him. Things that made him question everything he thought he knew about how civilized species were supposed to behave toward each other. Your kindness confuses me, Jathic said one night while Marcus applied regenerator gel to the healing scars on his wing. In Draktharian culture, we value only strength. The strong lead and the weak serve or die. This is the way of fire and claw, the way our ancestors survived on our brutal homeworld. Marcus continued his careful work, trying not to cause pain as he spread the gel over damaged tissue. That sounds harsh. It is survival, Jathic replied, his voice thoughtful in the way of someone reconsidering long-held beliefs. But your species operates differently, and this difference troubles me because I cannot understand the logic behind it. What do you mean? Marcus Jathic shifted his position, folding his good wing more comfortably against his back. I have studied your species extensively. It was my specialty at the archive before the purge. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy, not by far. The Korthans are stronger, and the Vrex have better reflexes, and the Titanids can survive in environments that would kill you in seconds. Marcus nodded. This was not news to any human who had traveled beyond Earth's solar system. Humans are not the smartest either, Jathic continued. The Vel Collective has processing capabilities far beyond your neural architecture, and the synth minds can calculate probabilities that would take human computers years to solve. We're aware we're not special, Marcus said dryly. But you are special. Jathic's tail twitched with excitement, the way it did when he was working through a complex idea. You are special because you do things that make no sense by any rational measure. And yet somehow these illogical behaviors have made you influential far beyond what your abilities should allow. Marcus sat back on his heels, interested now. Like what? Like this. Jothic gestured at the space between them, at the medical supplies and the half-eaten meal they had been sharing. You waste resources on broken things, on beings that cannot repay you, on creatures that your own security forces classify as dangerous pests to be eliminated. You're not a pest, Marcus said for what felt like the 100th time. I know you believe that. And this is exactly the defect I'm trying to explain. Jothic's voice rose with enthusiasm before he caught himself and lowered it again, mindful of security patrols. Every other species in the galaxy operates on hierarchical systems based on merit. Strength, intelligence, or utility. The Vol keep only those who contribute to the collective efficiency. The Korthans honor those who prove themselves in combat. Even my own people exile the weak, but humans, he continued, his golden eyes bright in the dim light. Humans have this concept you call compassion, which seems to mean helping others even when it provides no benefit to yourself. Even when it might actively harm your own interests. Marcus thought about that while he packed away the medical supplies. I guess we just think everyone deserves a chance, regardless of their circumstances. Why? Jothic asked simply. Why does a being deserve anything simply for existing? This is the question I cannot answer. The question that haunts my research, because we've all needed help at some point, Marcus said. Humanity almost destroyed itself 3 times before we figured out how to get along: nuclear war, climate collapse. The automation crisis. We survived because people chose to help each other instead of just helping themselves. Jothic was silent for a long moment, processing this information with the careful attention of a scholar encountering a paradox. So your species learned cooperation through near extinction. Maybe, Marcus agreed. Or maybe we just decided that a civilization that doesn't take care of its people isn't worth having. But I am not your people, Jothic pointed out. I am not even human. I am a member of a species that has raided your colonies, killed your citizens, taken your resources by force for centuries before the Korthan Empire imposed peace. You didn't do those things, Marcus said firmly. You're just a scholar who lost everything and needed help. This is what I mean. Jothic's tail twitched again. You separate the individual from the group. You judge based on specific actions rather than categorical identity. This is almost unique among galactic species. Marcus had never thought of it that way. How do other species handle it? They do not, Jothic said simply. If you are Dractarian, you are treated as all Dractarians are treated based on our species' reputation. If you are Vel, you are measured by collective standards. If you are human, well, humans have a reputation too. What reputation? Marcus asked, curious despite himself. Huck's mouth opened slightly in what might have been a smile. Unreasonable, unpredictable, dangerously compassionate. There are 3 different academic papers circulating in xenopsychology. Circles trying to explain why humans rescued a Vel colony ship that had attacked Earth forces just 2 months prior during the border wars. The Aurora incident, Marcus remembered. They were civilians caught in a military operation. Their life support was failing. Exactly, Jothic said. Any other species would have left them to die as justified casualties of war. But humans risked their own ships to save them. And then this is the part that truly baffles other species. Humans demanded no compensation. No political concessions, no formal apology. You just saved them and left. Marcus shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. But why is it the right thing? Jothic pressed. Where does this moral framework come from that says helping your enemies is right? I don't know, Marcus admitted. Maybe it's because we believe people can change. Or because we'd want someone to help us if our positions were reversed. Or maybe we just can't stand by and watch people suffer when we could do something about it. Jathik settled back against the wall, his damaged wing folding carefully. I am documenting this, keeping detailed notes about our interactions, about the way you and other humans behave. Because I believe this defect of yours, this compassion that makes no logical sense, might be the key to understanding how humanity has become so influential in galactic affairs despite being newcomers with average abilities. You think kindness is a strategic advantage? Marcus asked skeptically. I think, Jathik said slowly, that kindness might be the most powerful force in the galaxy. And no one has realized it yet because it looks like weakness until you see what it builds. A proximity alarm chimed softly from Marcus's wrist unit shift. Change in 20 minutes. Time to head back before his absence was noticed. Same time tomorrow? Marcus asked as he gathered his things. If security does not find me first, Jathik replied, but there was hope in his voice now. Hope that had not been there 3 weeks ago when he was just a starving scavenger begging for leftovers. Marcus paused at the corridor entrance and looked back at the dragon who had become his friend. They won't find you. I'll make sure of it. Why? Jathik asked again, but this time it sounded less like a challenge and more like wonder. Because that's what friends do, Marcus said simply, and left before he could see the expression on Jathik's face. The look of someone encountering a concept so foreign to their experience that it rewrote their understanding of what was possible.